Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of The Breakpoint, I want to talk about base ownership. This video was suggested by Gianpiero Giacomini, and it's a great topic because it's something that I'm really passionate about. I actually think bases are the most underappreciated aspect of Smash Up, and sometimes I like them more than factions. In fact, I would love to see a bases only booster pack because I think it would add a lot to the game, particularly around this topic. I could play the same faction combination multiple times in a row and still have a fresh experience if the bases are different. This video suggestion was around what bases are meaningful to other factions, and there's so much here that I can't possibly cover it all in one video. That's why I hope to bring back the Breakpoint series to periodically touch on these issues. Simply put, I agree that there are many factions who benefit from bases that are not their own, but I have a lot of problems with the base structure as a whole. In my Little Bo Peep video, I talked about base drafting, which many people didn't know what I meant by that term. It means to specifically give each player a certain number of bases to include in the base deck beyond what is required. Now I realize that many will be opposed to this, but I ask you to keep an open mind as I explore this topic with respect to ownership. Let's start with the facts. Each faction has 2 bases. The current rule creates a bloated base deck, because you include the bases from each set represented in the game. This is often between 4 and 6 sets, and as many as 8, for an unrealistic number of bases. It's too hard to sort and shuffle, and you won't use that many bases at all. There may also be no perfect solution, because using the faction bases only is not a solution, not only in terms of quantity, but also quality. This is because base ownership is actually pretty meaningless, due to the fact that the idea behind ownership has been inconsistently applied throughout Smash Up's history. In terms of major categories, there are 3 types of bases in general: those that provide a mechanical advantage to their faction, those that thematically match their faction, and those that are seemingly randomly assigned. For example, the ghost base, the Dread Gazebo, doesn't make any sense for the ghosts. It seems like the anti-steampunk base, and it just happened to be given to ghosts, who happen to have only one play-on-base action, even though it's a good one. Not every base benefits its faction's owner. I think this is because it might provide an advantage to what bases are actually drawn. But why bother tying the bases to factions overall? If the rule ever changes again, to the point where it is faction-specific, then we will have a real problem. Consider the core set. I mentioned that the ninja bases only help their faction somewhat, and largely rely on the partner faction for proper usage. So why do the ninjas get credit for 2-3-2 splits? Because ninja bases rolls right off the tongue? The robot bases provide a clear advantage to that faction, because the robots can create absurd power levels which tie nicely into Factory 436-1337. The swarm nature helps the central brain close really quickly. Then you have the pirates, whose abilities are more thematically represented than providing an advantage. In fact, it gives pirate-like abilities to other players which might actually hurt the pirates. But what about the homeworld? This base is perfect for robots and wizards, but how does it help aliens? I think that's always a great question to ask. Why is one base given to another faction? My guess for the homeworld would be that you can play an invader, then immediately play a collector to return it, allowing even faster VP farming. Normally this would take 2 turns with minions alone, but is expedited, something the aliens need because it provides protection. But this provides far more value to other factions that specialize in lower powered minions, to the point where the base may not be around long enough for aliens to utilize. To highlight some questionable base assignment, look at the obligatory Cthulhu expansion. If I didn't have the assignments written down and verified by the production notes, I would think that I've gotten them wrong. I think the Miskatonic University bases want to make sense for their factions, but I see problems. The VP split seems off for Miskatonic University, the base, because what is the point of using Madness to win first place on Miskatonic University only for second place to get the same VP reward? And other players can benefit from Asylum more than Miskatonic because it evens the Madness playing field. Of the 4 factions, I think Innsmouth is the faction that needs the most base help. Plateau of Leng is a fantastic base for the Innsmouth, as it allows the locals more potential to swarm. The only problem is the Plateau of Leng is an Elder Thing base. It is much more useful than Innsmouth, which will take the Innsmouth player several turns to utilize because the bottom of their deck is purgatory, even with their draws. The idea of locals retrieving locals doesn't make sense because the locals won't be reaching that far. While Ritual Sight does make sense, I'm not sure that the Innsmouth itself does. Mountains of Madness could conceivably go to any non-Innsmouth faction, but if anything, this thematically represents the minions of Cthulhu and it's their base. It doesn't help them. If anything, it probably hurts them because it makes higher powered minions more valuable, which the minions of Cthulhu lack. And half the minions they do have destroy themselves, which is why it makes no sense that they have Ryla as a base. Why give the most minion-starved faction the VP farming base? No Moon is a fantastic base that adds a ton of intrigue to the game. But other than being an explicit Star Wars reference, what does this base mean to the Astroknights? Not a lot. You could argue that it encourages them not to spread out, but the same can be true of several factions. In the same set, Unicrave is a total crapshoot because the Changerbots have no way to manipulate the outcome. Thematic, yes, but this base has Explorer written all over it. I'm having a hard time with how Q-Point really benefits the Magical Girls since Walking Castle cannot block it. They find strength in numbers, but have a base that reduces their numbers. They don't create a singularly powerful minion, which is what Q-Point wants. Bases can mean more to other factions than even factions who are a good fit. I've mentioned repeatedly how much I love Winter Squashed because of what it means to opponents who can move minions. You can use their cards against them, and it's such a natural fit that is curious as to why no mass movement faction ever got a ninja base. I would have given the ninja distribution to the pirates who can move minions. At the very least, they should have gotten one of them. It makes perfect sense for the ignobles, but that distribution could have been in the game since the beginning with all the factions that can utilize movement. This is much faster than using the ignoble mechanic, which still requires you to use many of your cards. I think what inevitably happens is that there are ideas that the bases want to explore that may or may not line up with a faction in the set, and some faction mechanics would be too esoteric for bases, which is why other abilities are used. So to use only the faction's bases is problematic because the assignment is more arbitrary than it would appear, but to use the entire set creates bloat. Which is why I feel strongly that allowing a player to include specific bases based on their pairings is important. Consider a faction like Vampires. Castle Blood may provide a catch-up mechanic, but it may be really hard to trigger that and Fledging Vampire on the same turn without being really far behind. The Crypt doesn't do enough to justify the Heavy Drinker killing a minion, which too often results in a net power loss. This might make it break even, which still results in the loss of a minion, and minions have value, because when your one minion is destroyed, you lose all presence on the base. But you know what the Vampires could really use? VP farming bases. Throw in Field of Honor or Cave of Shinies, and it now provides more incentive for the Vampires to actually start killing their minions. I think Innsmouth are the better example of a faction who would love to draft bases. Faceless City is perfect for them, as they can grab more locals, but also undo the damage of putting good cards on the bottom. They were always a 2-base attack faction, which is why Under the Bed benefits them as well. Which, by the way, makes no sense for teddy bears. What base is perfect for a faction who can play a lot of small-powered minions? Not just the homeworld, but Rhodes Plaza Mall. You'll actually want your minions to be small, as it means you have more time to play the locals. Recruitment now trades 1.5 Madness VP for 3 actual VP. And if you are playing so many minions on these other bases, now Innsmouth starts to make sense as a means for reclaiming your locals. A faction that struggled badly pre-Titan can gain a significant boost just by viewing the base deck as a chance to improve. When a great base comes out that plays perfectly into your strategy, it's a great moment. If Smash Up is supposed to be an analytical game, why limit that to just the factions? Give players the opportunity to further drive their strategy by selecting bases that go into the deck. I think using the default base, with 1 or 2 extra per player, creates a reasonable sized deck. Make it an official variant if needed. There is too much potential here to simply allow the game to become scripted in setup. There has to be a way to be new player friendly while also allowing for advanced tactics and drafting, and I think that revisiting the base ownership is largely unexplored and rife with potential. For future Breakpoint videos, expect to see a base with an interesting ability that others can utilize. I'll talk about why I think the original faction got it, and what can be done with it by others. This is not an easy topic, so let me know your thoughts in the comment. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, let's shut it down.